Hello and welcome to the new season of the Spotlight series presented by the Black Podcasters Association, powered by Afros and Audio. This series is where we shine a spotlight on a Black podcast creative or professional from our online community. My name is Corey Gums, and I am the founder as well as your host. Before we introduce our guest for today, please make sure you like this episode, subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to tap the notification bell so that you can know when we bring you new content. And lastly, in honor of Women's History Month, and thanks to the sponsorship of the Women of Color Podcasters community, for a limited time, you can get your first month free of membership, your first month of membership free to the Black Podcasters Association. So make sure you join today and check out wocpodcasters.co to learn more about their wonderful community committed to helping women of color accomplish their podcasting goals. And now that we got all that out the way, I'm excited. Today, we would like to welcome Bri M, the host and executive producer of the Power Not Pity podcast. Bri has contributed to many conversations about disability, race, and gender within the podcasting industry, and is also a political agitator with a fierce desire to change the way disabled people of color are regarded in mass media. There's a lot more to Bri than that statement, so I'm going to allow her to introduce herself to everybody and talk about how she got started, who she is. Who Bri is, and how Bri got started in the podcasting industry.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Corey, for having me. Thank you, Black Podcasters Association, Afros and Audio. You know what it is. Hey, everybody. I'm Bri M, Bri like sky. My pronouns are Z, and I am a podcaster, political agitator, like Corey said. I'm really interested in changing the way disabled people of color are seen and portrayed in mass media. In 2017, I created my podcast, Power Not Pity, and it's an interview show about disabled people of color. We talk, we tell our stories, we shoot the shit, talk about ableism, all that stuff, right? And I'll let you know, I'm a Jamaican-American. I'm proudly Jamaican-American, proudly queer, proudly non-binary, proudly trans, proudly disabled, and I'm from the Bronx. Yeah, yeah.
Boogie down, boogie down.
Boogie down.
Okay, so it's so multifaceted right now. So I don't even know where to start. So let's just start with how you got started.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I was saying before, in 2017, I became disabled in 2014, actually. I developed multiple sclerosis. And so I was, just in bed trying to recover. And around that time, I didn't really see anybody talking about disabled people of color in their podcasts or featuring disabled people of color on their podcasts. So I was like, you know what? Let me just create this because we need our voices out there too. So in 2017, I created it. And I actually remember I created the logo on a Greyhound bus and going back to New York from Philly.
Mhm.
And I remember my partner put it together and we were just like, we were gelling, and it just came together like that. It was a beautiful thing. And I'll say that like most of my podcasting journey has been similar too. Like things just have been gelling, like just
Right.
coming to me. Um, and yeah, it's been
Okay.
really good.
So I love the name. So how did you come up with the name Power Not Pity for your podcast?
Okay, so there's this book that I really appreciated when I started learning about disability and disability justice. It's called No Pity, and this is so bad. I can't remember the name of the author right now, but it's called No Pity. And so, I was reading it, I was checking it out, I was learning a lot, and I was like, you know what? Let me call my show Power, Not Pity, because we deserve to be seen as powerful, as having agency, as being genuine and having our own authentic stories being told. and shared.
All right, that's dope. I have a background with helping people with disabilities, so I trust me. I know. I ran a group home, and when I was there, my guys and ladies there, they were able to get stay home by themselves, get jobs, and we taught them how to take public transportation, and it was like a very important thing for them, and it was I was so proud to see that, like just how the self esteem of just
Hmm.
having that independence and advocating, learning to advocate for themselves as well. So it's important, and I'm glad you're doing this because, like you said, you don't hear a lot of these conversations or see a lot of these conversations happening, especially in the Black community in regards to the podcasting space. Um, so what is your background? I mean, I know we were talking before we went live. You have a background in radio. You want to talk more about that and how it influenced your or how it helps you with your podcast? Because I know for a lot of people, this is their first time doing it, and they're learning as they go along. But you have a background in radio, so you have a little bit better perspective on how to do things in regards to talking and interviewing people on the microphone.
Yeah. So thinking about it now, right? I'm like, oh my God, when did my background start? And I'm like, uh I think it probably started before I even came out the womb,
Okay.
because my father was a DJ. And he used to, he knew everybody, and his radio show, like everybody knew it, right?
Okay.
And so, I've always loved music. I've always loved entertainment. And I think I started radio when I was in college, and I just remember loving it, falling in love with it. And I'm a big music nerd, metalhead, and I would go to shows all the time, and I'd be like, I should just work in the industry. And so that's kind of where I started. I did radio, and I worked in the music industry for a long time. I got my BA in sociology, so I learned how to interview people through that. And I guess I like to think my road to podcasting is just kind of a mixture of all of that together, the radio, the music, the interviewing, all that stuff. So, yeah, like I said, again, it just kind of gelled together.
It just
Mhm.
converged and it just
It just did.
blossomed into what it is now. So that's dope.
Yeah.
So your father had a radio show here in New York, or was it in Jamaica?
No, actually, so he's from St. Lucia,
Oh, St. Louis. Okay.
and yeah, yeah, he's from St. Lucia. So like in the 70s, back when radio was like a big deal.
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah.
All right, that's dope. That's dope. So, what was he doing? Like mainly like Caribbean music and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm sure he was, I'm sure he was doing all the Caribbean music, all the attitude on the mic, because
Yeah,
there's a thing about Caribbean DJs, they're always like interrupting the music.
yeah. Air horns.
Exactly.
But I mean, I hear that all. I'm in New York City too, so we already
Yeah.
know how that goes, especially during the
Yeah,
summertime. Um, so how has your I know you said you were diagnosed with multiple sclerosis couple what 2014, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
2014. Mhm.
So how has that influenced your journey with podcasting? How has
Hmm.
that helped you find your voice in the podcasting space?
Well, I think there's something unique about MS, right? It's one of those. It's a neurological condition,
Mhm.
and it affects your immune system. So the kind of thing about it is that you never really know what you're gonna deal with day to day. You could have a good day, you could have a bad day. It's all about what you can endure. And I think just in the way of getting used to that kind of insecurity, or like just the nature of it being unsure, um, helped me to kind of be flexible and be able to kind of you know um, be as direct as possible, because when you're not feeling well, you got to express your needs, or
Right.
you're not going to get anywhere, right? And so I think I've always been kind of an outward facing person, right? um, Sort of a extrovert on the introverted side. And so I think my MS has like given me giving me the balls to be like, yo, I'm here, and I've made it, because it was hard getting over the first year or two. I had to I ended up in the hospital. I had to learn how to walk again. I had to learn how to do everything differently. And so, it kind of just reframed my mind into thinking, well, there's only so many years that I'll have on this earth, right?
Right.
Why not do the things that I want to do and do them now?
That's dope. I mean, we you have to, a lot of people we take walking for granted, right? We don't think about those things. And I know for
Yeah.
me, when I first started working in the field with developmental disabilities, it was just like you start realizing how, I guess, how blessed you are, right?
Yeah.
And having quote unquote full health or good health. And you learn to appreciate things, but you also learn to recognize the strength and the drive that people have that, um, like I said, my residents, they were told they can't do anything. And it was like, I didn't like that. And I was like, okay, you want to work? Okay, well, let's figure out how to solve this. And just seeing the growth and the pride that they had, no matter how old they were, or no matter what the disability was. And we just figured out a way for them to do it. So I think that's commendable. Um, I guess that helps also with, like, the fear part, right? A lot of people come into podcasting and they're like, I think that's part of where people kind of freeze with their content and figuring out what their voice is that fear. So I'm gonna assume that helped you help find your voice. Now, I wanna flip this a little bit, because when I read your bio, I was like, "Oh, political agitator. I gotta know more. I wanna hear more about this," Though, because people tend to say I'm into politics, or I like to talk about things, but those are very specific words. So when I hear political agitator, I think Shay, or somebody like that. So, or like Martin or Malcolm, like, can you explain that more to people, what it is, and why you chose to become a political agitator, and how does that role play in your content with your podcast?
Yeah, definitely. So, I did not come up with the label political agitator, but I did this fellowship that was surrounded around journalism, right?
Mhm.
And so when I got in, the person who created the whole thing was like, "Wow, you're a political agitator." And I remember when she said it, I was like, "Ooh, okay, I'm gonna put this in my bio because
I
that's
gel too,
dope."
right?
Yeah, no, totally. Because like I said, I'm based here in LA, but I'm from the Bronx, and people from the Bronx, we got that attitude, we got that, we got that swagger, right? So, and if people aren't doing things right, then we put them on blast. Um, I'm not gonna say that I put anyone on blast, but I do like to introduce accessibility, introduce disability justice into like whatever conversation I have, whoever I'm meeting. I like to talk about that stuff. And so I'll tell you, well, it's funny to me, but I hope you find it funny. So I'll tell you a story, right? I remember when I first found out about Afros and audio, I was like, this is dope. I've never seen anything like this. Like, these are the people who I want to be a part of. Like, I want to roll with y'all. And so I emailed, this was maybe like 6 months or so before Afros and audio was about to go live for the second time. And I emailed Talib. I was like, "Hey, what are you doing for accessibility?" And he said he wasn't sure. And so I was like, "Okay, well, let's talk about it, because
Mhm.
it's important." And there's this other person who is also a part of Afros and Audio. And when I did an IG live with Talib, I was talking about accessibility, right, in podcasting. And I told I told everyone that I was like, I hit up Talib. And then there was another person in the room. He was like, yo, that's a pretty Bronx move to just roll up in somebody's inbox and be like, you're doing it wrong.
I mean, I guess that's the New York thing, right? You know,
Mhm.
that was kind of how the drug game was back in the 80s and 90s. That's just kind of how we are. I know I get it. I know I get a pushback sometimes. Like people tell me they don't ask for my opinion or something. It's like, nah, I ain't got time for this. We gotta closed mouth don't get fed, right? You always hear that all the time.
Yeah, true that.
That's dope.
Facts.
You know, it's good to hear that. Like, so let me ask you. I, I'm going to ask because you brought up accessibility, right? Is that a problem within the podcasting industry?
Good
Or
question.
I don't know if a problem is it an issue, or is it a I know it's a concern for you, but is it from your opinion or from your view of everything and how you've been moving in the podcasting industry, is that is it a is you know, I know like out in the general public when we're going to stores, we can see you can physically see the accessibility issues that can arise. With podcasting, it's more microphones and stuff like that. Do you see, or recording online like we're doing right now, do you see an issue within the podcasting industry, or is it just a matter of just people being understanding that there's voices out here that are advocating on the side of people with disabilities?
Okay. Yeah, so I think it's obviously like the issue of logistical things, like, accessibility in terms of your festival. Like, do you have interpreters? Do you have captions available? What does your website look like? Do you have transcripts? Like, all of these different things, right? That allow people who can't necessarily hear, hard of hearing, maybe impaired in some sort of way, to give them more access to what you're saying, your viewpoints, and, like what you're trying to express with your show. So that's, I mean, that's one part of it. But I think maybe the bigger issue is how the culture of podcasting works. And that's something that I'm trying to come up against and like uh, advocate for us, because we get closed out of a lot of opportunities. And just because people don't think we exist or that we're an afterthought, right? There
Mhm.
aren't there aren't enough Black disabled people being featured on other people's podcasts. Like when I talk to other Black disabled uh, folks in my community, they're like, yeah, we don't see ourselves represented, and I think that's a culture problem. I think there's also an issue when it comes to corporate podcasting. Like I was a part of Stitcher's Breakthrough Fellowship program. I was their second fellow, and I'm like, I'm gonna be real with you. Like their whole culture of corporate podcasting was hell of inaccessible. Like in order for me to join the team, I had to do a drug test, and I tested positive for marijuana, but that's because I use it medically, and it wasn't even something that occurred in their minds to say, hey, let's have some nuance around this, because I mean, like, why do you have to drug test anyone who's doing a podcast or like working on a podcast network? Because I mean, how much does that affect how work is done? I think that's just an example, right? Like, there's always these obstacles that I come up against that have to do with the erasure of disabled people of color in any form of media, let alone podcasting. So I think when we think about accessibility in this industry, it's the biggest issue, I think, is just erasure altogether.
Okay, I appreciate that. You know, I'm glad we're having this conversation because, like you said, with Talib, the conversation you had with Talib, it's like we don't think about these things sometimes, and it's not that you're intentionally sometimes just ignoring it. Or I'm not going to speak for everybody. For myself, I'm just like I've learned like how big the voice of the LGBTQ and trans community is in the podcasting space. I've also learned since I've gotten into this how big Black women's voices are in this space. And it's like you don't, you're so busy listening to your podcast and think that you're fanning over, right? Well, in my case, fanboying over, right? And you don't think about the broader the whole. You just only see from where you're at within the podcasting, what you have on your directory. So we don't think about those things. We have a great question from Bethany over chatting over chowder. And it was in regards to your MS. So podcasting can be exhausting without a disability. How do you plan your podcast schedule when you never know if you're going to have an overwhelming sense of MS fatigue? And I think that's a great question. And I think that's something we as podcasters need to understand and learn, because somebody might watch this and say, "Hey, I want you on my show," and not recognize that it just might not be that right time for you. How do you I can't say you plan, but how do you deal with that?
Yeah, definitely. So my community of disabled people, able-bodied people, um, we're so brilliant, we're so beautiful, and we're so forgiving, you know? And when I think about me trying to schedule things, I'm not going to lie, it's extremely difficult. But, I try to use the same sort of techniques that other people use, like scheduling. And, right now I'm batching so that, I have a bank of episodes done so that, I can kind of chill while I'm releasing. But I think more importantly is that I have the say in how my show goes, right? Like I have to remember that I'm the one who controls this whole thing. Like don't let the like the constraints of podcasting culture tell you that you have to do things this way and only this way, right?
All right.
And I think just considering how my community holds me and how they hold the show, I can always tell people like, "Yo, I'm not having a good day today." And maybe the show won't come out for, the next month. And it's not like I don't have uh I'm never in my feelings about it, or like I don't have, the guilt or the shame or any sorts of those feelings that come along with like not meeting your goals, right?
Mhm.
um I think, in overcoming that and realizing that people are still committed to you because of what you do, that's the most important thing for me, that I try to remind myself, even though it's really hard.
Yeah. So Bethany
Mhm.
says she loves the response. Do how you want to do it, and I think that's important for a lot of podcasters. I've always, since I've been coming to the space, one of my biggest concerns was understanding pod fade and addressing pod fade as a consultant, as a person who helps people develop podcasts. And I think like you hit the nail on the head when you said not doing it like everybody else, do it how you have to do it. And I think that helps relieve some of that stress, the pressure of and your audience, I think people realize your audience will forgive you, especially they know you're coming from a certain space, they understand, and especially if you're being transparent about it. I think that's important. If you have a really good podcast and you're releasing every 6 months, they'll, your audience will be prepared for that. You have to, as Rob Dunwood says, you have to train your audience for how you want them to react to your podcast. So I think that's important. I know I said I have a question for you, because I know this is in the Black community. This, it's taboo, right? So you identify as queer and transgender, correct?
Yeah.
Right.
I do.
So how
And non-binary.
and non-binary.
Yep.
So you have that, and then you have the disability. How does that how and we kind of have a clear idea of like how people respond to that in our community, right?
Mhm.
How does that affect how you come up with your content, or how do you does that affect how your motivation? Does that affect, or does that help drive you to really get your message across in your podcast? Does that inspire you, or does it what's the word? Not demotivate, but does it, make you
Yeah.
frustrated sometimes about it?
Yeah. So I'm the kind of person, I bring all of my identities into the room, right? Like I can't pick and choose because I've been trying to do that now since the beginning, you know?
All right.
And now that I'm getting older, I'm like, I don't have time for that, you
Right.
know?
Yeah.
Um, so I used to think that I had to be one or the other when I came into any kind of room. Being Black, I can't be disabled. I can't show up in my disability. I can't talk about disability. No one wants to hear that. Being in disabled spaces, especially white disabled spaces, which there are a lot of, um, I can't be Black. Like I can't express my own ideas on race and my experience, right? Like being trans and like, mostly straight space, which honestly I don't usually find myself in. But like thinking, oh well, I have to pick and choose that day. That's something that other Black people have told me on the show is like, actually, I'm trying to figure out how to be my full self. And I think when I think about all the places I've been, all the people I've spoken to, all the panels that I've been on, right? Um, I'm thinking about the ways that I bring myself into the room, and it does inspire me. It does inspire me to uncover all of this, uncover the fact that, intersectionality is not something that people talk about, people are even familiar with, right? And
Right.
when I'm in like Black spaces, right? Sometimes people don't even see my cane. I walk with a cane. Sometimes I use a wheelchair. So sometimes I'm in Black spaces and people don't even see my wheelchair. People don't even register that I'm physically disabled because I'm young, right?
Right.
And so they look at me and they're like, oh yeah, Z's young, like Z must be just okay, like the rest of us. But I can't function like the rest of y'all, no, and I choose not to. um and that's because I just have this like running narrative in my head that I want to make space for all of us. I want all of us to feel like we can access the table, not bring the seat to the table, but that the table is ours. And I think that since I've started the show, I've noticed more people are feeling able to talk about these things, to talk about being the only one in the room, or being, you know, uh, conflicted in certain spaces. Um, yeah, I mean, I think it drives me to figure out how I can create safe spaces for Black disabled people to be their authentic selves.
That's
Yeah, it's
dope.
part of it's part of why I wake up and do this podcast.
I was
Yeah.
going to ask you, how does it make you feel? But and I know it's not easy, especially those days where you don't feel like it, right? Like even myself,
Yeah.
you'll hear me say the story. Like there was times when I was like, I'm gonna just shut the group down. I can't do this anymore. And then somebody comes along and says, hey, yo, I love it. This has been a huge help to me. And it's like, all right, I'll keep it going for another 3 months and see where it goes. And so I know it's even more hard. It's even harder for you, especially because you don't have control over that, right? Me, I can go play some video games and I'll, decompress for 10 minutes, for a couple hours and then come back and be, all right, I'm rejuvenated.
Yeah.
You can't say, all right, MS, you can go over there and come back tomorrow. I need to get this done. So what can we do?
I'm sorry, because I'm seeing my MS as like a person, and my MS is always like, "Bitch,
you know,
you better figure that shit out."
yeah, I ain't going nowhere. You know,
No,
this is my block.
exactly.
But because because we don't. And I think you brought up something very important, that when we see you, and especially when you're very articulate and vocal, and quick story. I remember we used to take on Friday nights. We would take our guy, our house to a party, and sometimes and sometimes you can't look at somebody and tell they have a disability, whether it's developmental or physical or whatever, right? And we would just be like, okay, wait till the music starts, and then you kind of know who's who. But you had to be real careful. And I've seen like people like guys try to talk to girls or girls try to talk to guys, and you realize, okay, no, this is not. This person is not. He's not able body, or he's not. He's not here, right? They have a disability, and we tend to forget. We tend to not look at that. It's just. It's kind of like what white people do to black people. Oh, you're so articulate. You're not like the rest of them. It's that kind of mentality. So, yeah, we might see you walk in with a cane, and then you open your mouth and you start talking. It's like, oh, she's fine, right? And you just start to, which sometimes I think is a good thing, because now I'm just focusing on you as the person, but not as the disability. And that was one thing I've always tried to advocate with people when I would take my people we call them consumers. Used to hate calling them that. Take them to input to public places. Is like, no, here you do. They would talk to me, and I'm like, no, he has the money. Talk to him, and let him deal with it. And you're gonna stand there. I guess because I'm a little intimidating, because I'm a big guy. You're gonna stand there and wait for him to count out as long as it takes for him to count out that money. But how can we, as Black podcasters, help people with disabilities, especially people of color with disabilities? How can we support and help with their voices in this space? What are some things we can do that can help bridge this gap that exists? I think you muted for some reason. Okay,
Yes,
no.
I was. Check, check. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you now.
Okay, cool, cool, cool. So Black people, I'm speaking to you. I'm looking at the camera. Um, have you ever felt alone? Have you ever felt like you couldn't speak about what you were going through? Have you ever felt like, well, maybe my shit doesn't matter, you know? And I want y'all to think about those feelings of isolation, those feelings of being ostracized, those feelings of being an afterthought, right? Well, it's the same thing with us. It's the absolute same thing. Like we feel the same exact thing. Now take that feeling and exponentially multiply it, right? Like that's how it feels to live, at least for me, that's how it feels to live as a disabled trans non-binary person. And I just want people to listen to us, like really see us and hear what we have to say. Hire us, put us on your shows. Even if your show might be like, let's say your show is like a sports show, you chatting about basketball, you getting it in around football or whatever, there's obviously places for disability in there. And no matter what you're talking about, disability will cut across it, because it's a natural phenomenon. And honestly, it's where we all going to end up when if you're lucky enough to reach the end of your life, like a typical, I don't know, 80 years or so, you will end up disabled before you die. Like that's just a fact. Let's be
Right.
real, and let's be willing to talk to people who are different than us. Like, okay, so we're all together, we're Black, we're all podcasters, we have different intersecting identities. Let's all talk to each other. Let's all decide, hey, I'm gonna put you on, you know, I'm gonna talk to you because I know that your voice is just as important as mine. And everybody's better for it. Not just Black people, not just disabled people, everyone. Like that's what I try to
Right.
emphasize, is that accessibility is not just for disabled people, it's for everyone.
That's dope. I
Yeah.
love it. It's for everybody. We're all here
Yeah.
to learn. We're all here to share information. And I want to go back to the sports thing you said, that they people with disability enjoy sports too. Just because someone has a
Exactly.
disability doesn't mean they have an opinion on their favorite athlete or anything like that. So, and it doesn't have to be conversations about athletes who are now disabled or suffer injuries that disable them. It could just be, let's talk about the Knicks, or let's just talk about the Mets, or whatever team that person likes. So I think that's also important.
Exactly.
But those are some real powerful words. Bethany said, "Yes, we hear you, Bri." All the yes and yesville. Okay, it's still USA.
Yes,
Um,
big ups, Bethany. Big ups.
let's move a little. Let's move back to your podcast. So typically, how long does your podcast? What? How long is a season in your podcast?
Hmm. Well, it all depends on what I'm feeling that day, right?
Right.
But this next season, I'm super excited about, and I think it might be 7 to 8 episodes. But yo, if I want to do what I want to do, then it might be 9, it might be 12, it might
Okay.
extend to next year. Like who knows? But it's all um, dependent on how I'm feeling, not only physically but emotionally, spiritually, right?
Hmm.
And what is driving me, like what my capacity is at. Like one of the things about being disabled is at least with my disability, right? Like I have to pace myself, like I have to gauge how much energy I have from this part of the day to this part of the day.
Right.
So yeah, I'd say about 7 to 8 episodes because I release them monthly.
Okay. I
Yeah.
mean, I love it that you just you're just like when I set the rules. I decide how long. People like I get people all the time. How long is the season? I'm like whatever you want it to be. I
Yeah.
mean, you do have to recognize, like you said, your capacity for what you can and can't handle, but you set the rules. That's the beauty of podcasting. You set the rules. You decide what content you want to. You decide what guests you're going to have on there. You decide how when you release your shows. All of that stuff plays a part. Now, there are some things that if you are trying to reach certain goals that we see work, but you set your rules, and I love it. And I hope people that are watching this really understand that despite whether you have a disability or not, you set your rules and you need to understand who you are and what your capacity for the work that you need to do to make it a success is because it will burn you out no matter what. So,
Yep.
um, when somebody listens to your podcast, what can they expect?
Well, when somebody listens to my podcast, they can expect cheesy jokes, okay?
Mhm.
Um, they can expect having a real intimate conversation with another person, with another disabled person of color. Honestly, that's my audience, disabled people of color, right? So it's just me and you. And some people have said that when they listen to my show, they feel like they're on the couch with an old friend. And I love that because I just want to make people comfortable, feel comfortable and safe and seen. And so I think that's what people can expect. And I think another thing that people can expect is uh, just in listening to an interview, a lot of people come away learning a lot. A lot of people come away thinking, oh wow, I didn't even think of that. Like I didn't even
Right.
know that I could express myself that way too.
Okay. And I know you said you release one episode a month, or how do you release your episodes so that people can know?
Yeah, release it monthly, so one episode
Okay.
a month.
Oh,
Yeah.
so like you said, okay, so you almost do like your season like typically about a half a year or around that time. Oh,
Yep.
that's dope. Okay. How has the response been for that? Because typically when you hear people talk about podcasting, they say, weekly, bi-weekly, monthly is kind of like a little a taboo release date. How has the response been for that from your listeners that your loyal listeners? I mean, because for some people it's like it's a whole month I have to wait for your next content. How do they respond to that?
Yeah. Well, I never felt the pressure to do it weekly because I never felt like my own inward pressure to do it weekly because I can't do that.
Right.
I'm I'm the host, I'm the producer, I'm the sound engineer, I'm the editor. Like there's only so much time that I can give to this. I mean, I give most of my time to this, right?
Mhm.
But I simply cannot do it in a week, right? So I
Okay.
had to figure out my own threshold, and then I had to communicate that to other people who are listening, people who are on the show and want to know when my stuff is coming out, right?
Right.
So I communicate that. And also, I've found that the disability justice community is very patient, very forgiving, because we live on the principles that time is only linear because we say so, only linear because the systems that be that oppress us as disabled people of color mandate that time is linear and that you have to go. You have to move at the pace of late stage capitalism, right? And for a lot of us in political disabled community, like, we don't accept that, you know? And we know that we can run counter to that because we support each other. And we know that all of our bodies have needs and wants, and that we're powerful despite whatever we're going through. We're powerful not despite what we're going through, but because of what we're going through. We're powerful not despite our quote unquote limitations. We
Right.
work around that, and they're no longer limitations because we make it work for us. So essentially what I'm saying is like, okay, I release it monthly, but like, I'm not making it for you John over there who expects it to be weekly. Nah, I'm making it for my community who's like, yeah, we're going to wait for you because what you have to say is important, and we're going to wait for you because we love what you do. So that's pretty much
You
all
know
I
your
can say.
audience. You know who your audience is,
Exactly.
and that's what people need to
Exactly.
understand. Who is my audience?
Mhm.
And you make your show for your audience.
Yep.
And if other people come into it and they enjoy it, they will become patient as well. You know, they'll become that part of that audience. So that's dope. Okay. First time I did that. uh there you go. So we got, you have to move at the stage. You have to move at the stage of late stage capitalism, and we don't support that. Not making it for you, I'm making it for my community. Bribe more. There you go. Put that on the t-shirt. Thank you, Beth.
I'm being quoted.
Yeah, see? I mean, that's what happens when you're political
Thank
agitator and
you.
you're out there advocating and stuff. We're gonna find your quotes on the internet soon. So I appreciate that. Um, so what's the future look like for you in this industry and your podcast in this industry?
Great question. What does the future look like for me? Well, I'm out here in these streets wanting accessible world domination. You feel me? Like, I want the whole world to be accessible. I want you and you and you to come through and be like, yes, I am also a part of this. I may not be disabled, but I'm also a part of this movement. And so the future looks like me continuing to do what I'm doing, keep on sharing people's stories, keep on interviewing people, keep on centering people who I feel like deserve to be centered. So, this next season that I'm coming out with is going to center Black disabled trans people, Black disabled trans and non binary people. Um, and I think it's so necessary to talk about what we're going through, just thinking about what's going on uh, related to trans youth right now, what's going on related to um, the political landscape of what it means to be Black, trans, and disabled in this country, of which there's a lot of silence around that. Um, and I'm really excited about it because I think that people could learn a lot, people could connect with a lot, even if they don't don't have those identities, don't share those identities. Um, I'm wanting people to feel like they can connect. And so at the end of every episode, I ask whoever's on the show, what's your disabled power? And now I'm not saying like, hey, what's your superpower? Because disabled people have been like villainized and also like superheroized for too long, you know?
Yes.
So when I say what's your disabled power, I mean like what is it about your disability that makes you feel powerful? What is it about your disability that gives you agency every day, you know? And so I'm going to be asking Black trans disabled people, like, yo, how do you make yourself? How do you wake up every day and make yourself anew? Because that's something that we have to do on the daily. It's like we wake up and we choose to be ourselves, you know? It's not like we jump out of bed and we're like, okay, I'm Bri. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like me being a Black trans disabled person, I have to bring my armor with me. And whatever kind of thing that could be, that is my armor. But I do feel like when we're out here, we're doing our thing, there's a certain amount of magic that comes along with it, right? And so I just want to put that shine on. I just want people to know more about that magic. So
That's
stay
dope.
tuned. It's
Such a
gonna be out in a couple of months.
It's been such an inspirational conversation, and it's been enlightening. I'm glad we did this. I'm glad we had this
Yeah,
conversation.
me
I
too.
hope
This was
people
awesome.
watching feel the same way. It's good to get different perspectives and see things from a different position. Um, so how can well, let me ask you the question I ask every. Do you have a question? I have a question I ask everybody that comes on here.
Yeah.
Um, what does it mean for you to be a Black podcaster, and what does it mean for you to be a member of the Black Podcasters Association?
Mm. What does it mean for me to be a Black podcaster? Wow. I don't know if anybody's ever asked me that before. Is that what it means for me to be a Black podcaster? um, for me, being a Black podcaster means that I have a vision and I'm trying my best to just make it happen, especially like despite all of the, like I said, all the systems that work against me and work to erase me. As a Black podcaster, I know because I can see it from the outside, right? And
Mhm.
so for me, it's about just being my authentic self. Being a Black podcaster means being my authentic self and sharing that with other people. And also, creating the stories that I want to see out there in the world, creating stories that make it easier for other Black podcasters coming up. Like, I'm so excited to see what's going to happen in, the next couple of years, talking to other Black disabled people, seeing what they come up with. That just makes me feel really excited. And about being a part of the BPA. Well, it's definitely helping me feel more connected, more plugged in to what's going on, especially in other people's worlds,
Yeah.
Because I think I'm not going to generalize. I'm not going to speak for anybody else, but I do know that working in podcasting, like working on your own podcast, can feel like working in isolation because there's a lot of moving parts, and you're never really sure, like, oh, are people listening? Like, what's out there? Like, you're never really sure like how people are going to respond until they respond, right?
Right.
So I think there's a really special way of being in the Black Podcasters Association that I really appreciate. Everybody shares whatever they're going through. There's the book club that I haven't joined yet because I have like 400 books to read.
Oh, trust me. You see the power behind me.
Yep. But yeah, y'all are like dope. And whenever I sign on to Mighty Networks, I'm always excited because I'm like, okay, what is Corey gonna post about today?
I appreciate that. That like again, that helps me keep motivated and stuff. But I definitely want you to in the group. I want you to bring us into your world. I
Yeah.
know it's a lot of people. We need to know more about what you're doing in your space and how we can support you there. So please, don't be shy.
I won't. I
Bring that
try not
Bronx,
to be
bring that
shy.
Bronx, bring that New York City to the group. I think we got enough New York City in the group, but bring that New York
Hell
City to
yeah.
so all right, so we're gonna wrap up. But how can people find you? How can people reach out to you if they want to bring you on their show or they want to be a guest on your show, how can they find you?
Yeah, totally. So I'm at Power Not Pity. That's POWERNOTPITY
Yes.
on pretty much all the social media handles, right?
I
Thank
got your
you.
Twitter.
Twitter, Instagram. Like I'm trying to get on TikTok because people say that we need to be on TikTok as podcasters, but I'm like, mm, I'll get there when I get there, right?
Yeah.
And as far as contacting me, my email address is always available to anyone who wants to hit me up. It's powernotpity@gmail.com.
All right, that's dope. Is there anything you want to leave this conversation with? Any words of inspiration? I mean, you already said plenty of inspirational things tonight. Is there any words you want to leave the audience with? Or that you want to say? You're
Mm.
not obligated to. I don't want to put pressure on you in that space. You were, like I said, you already dropped enough today. So if it's not, then that's fine. Um,
But I feel like I need some like closing words that people will be like, "Oh yeah, Bri, power, Bri, no pity, Bri." Like always seeking more knowledge. I don't know, like just include us and we will just make your shit even better. So don't forget about us, disabled people of color. Don't forget about us black disabled people, because we just bring even more spice into the mix.
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. I appreciate it. Thank you for being on here. Thank you for giving us a dope episode one, the premiere of our new season. I really
Yes.
appreciate having you here, and I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to when you release your new season. Everybody make sure you check it out. Power Not Pity. Go to her website. I'm go to Bride's website, excuse me.
Yeah.
PowerNotPity.com. Make sure you follow all the handles and stay up to date and support, share. Let people know that it's out here. Let people know that this podcast is important for our community. And even though it's for the disabled community, it's for all of us. And I really appreciate it. Um, so with that being said, thank you everybody for joining us on the show. You make sure you check out the spotlight. We've moved to a new day and time. It'll be every Sunday at 7 p.m. So make sure you check us out next week. If you're not following the Black Podcasters Association, you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. We're basically on everything but TikTok. I don't even have the
You got to
energy
get
to
up
get
on
into
it,
that yet.
Corey. Get up
We
on
will, but we
it.
look between the group and this, and it's hard, man. It's
Yeah,
very
I
hard. So,
know. I know.
but
Trust me.
but I want to shout out Women of Color Podcasters. Again, WOCpodcasters.co .co for their community, for their support of this month, for Women's History Month. For a limited time, you can get your first month of membership free. Just go to blackpodcastersassociation.com. Make sure you join. Make sure you join and come to the community. We want you. It's one of the most engaging communities dedicated to Black podcast creatives and professionals. So again, Bride, thank you for coming and have a good evening.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Corey. I really enjoyed it.
I did too. All right. All right. Let me having some technical difficulties. Oh shit.